You never did it? You don't know where? They're not from the behind the pale or pale of settlement?
I mean, generally, I know the territory, but I've never done. And in a weird way, I mean, I don't care in a certain way because I kind of knew them very, very well, and they were not articulate in English, and I don't know. I mean,
what'd they speak?
Well, they say, my old man's parents spoke English, very broken English with a heavy Yiddish accent. But their first language was Yiddish. And do
you speak Yiddish?
No, I don't. No, I only know what the usual curse words are and the.
Did your parents? Did your father?
Yes, he did, and he was good at it, and he was proud of it, and I enjoyed hearing him speak it. But again, I never bothered to learn it. It never even occurred to me.
So your memories of New York as when you were very young are it seems very clear.
Very clear because they had to do with jazz. I mean, in other words, my first passion as a child, because my old man loved jazz, my first passion as a child was jazz. And I was born in 1943, so I still got to hear the Titans, Charlie Parker and Billie Holiday and so on and so forth. And that's what really kind of marked my early life. And by the way, going back to Christianity without trying to kill it here, is that the two things, and we don't ever have to talk about it again in this interview, so I'm not trying to push it, but the two things that led me to Christianity were both the 12-step program and African-American music. Because
no, I mean, that's clear, and it's like, but when you were a kid, so you were in New York until you were 5, and then you're in Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah.
From 7 to 11.
Yeah.
And your father, you weren't a religious family, were you?
No, he was one of the reasons I got along so well with Jerry Wexler, is that Jerry was my fantasy father.
Right.
He was, I'm rich. My old man was not.
Yeah.
He produced Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin, which my old man did not do. He hung out with Wilson Pickett, which my old man did not do. But he talked like my old man. I mean, my old man, and Jerry was an intellectual. He was a literary intellectual.
And your father was too?
Yeah. And, they read high-powered books. They knew Einstein and Freud well.
Yeah, right.
They knew, they read, Saul Bellow and Philip Roth and Bernard Malamud.
It's interesting that generation, right, of Jews, that, your father was a traveling salesman, but the premium put on education by, first generation, second generation Jews to sort of like, to define us as a culture, that, you better, knowledge is power, education is how you get ahead, because they're not going to let you do a lot of things. Exactly. So you better be smart, right?
Yeah. And also, they were killers. I mean, they were intellectual killers. In other words, part of why I understood Jerry as well as I did is because he was like my father. And if you got into an argument with him about whether Sonny Rollins was a better tenor player than Sonny Stitt, or whether T-Bone Walker was a better guitarist than Buddy Guy, his argumentation style was to sort of destroy you if he could. I mean, it was
on those important subjects.
Exactly. I mean, he had to, and so there was a passionate antagonism as a conversationalist. Now, it doesn't mean underneath there wasn't, love and affection. There positively was, but
he beat you down. Is that what you're saying?
He just beat the shit out of you down, and that's one of the reasons why I could tiptoe through his tulips and become his ghostwriter.
Who, Jerry? But your father? What about your father? Did he
we had a falling out pretty early on because I understood he was an intellectual bully, as was Jerry.
Yeah,
And so I had to take them on. I didn't have to take them on, but my personality
You have
was,
to. When you're a son of a narcissistic father, at some point you're going to have to push him over the edge.
You got to kill him off at a certain point. And I know that sounds like kind of straight ahead Oedipal shit, but in my case it was true because they will eat you up.
Well, they deny you a sense of self.
Exactly, because my dad only saw me as an extension of him.
Exactly. That's exactly something we share, and that's deep shit. And, realizing that is it's a weird and deep thing that, that you're just seen as an appendage. And, when it's hard to see you as an appendage when it starts hitting you.
Exactly. And even in my own career, once it got off and I was doing okay and I was writing these books, he was never happy that I was a ghost writer because he wanted me to be, Philip Roth or Saul Bellow or one of these guys.
Yeah, but he would have undermined you no matter what you did.
Probably so. I think so. Yeah, I think that's probably true. He was proud, but he could never tell me that. And also he could never stop criticizing my work as being superficial as opposed to doing the Pulitzer Prize biography
right.
of being.
But either way, it sends us out into the world, sort of like having they implant a self-consciousness and a self-loathing in us because of our own judgment of ourselves. Yeah. And then you're kind of wandering around, emotionally untethered, looking for guidance. Yeah. From a very early age. Because your parents are incapable of it. What'd your mother do?
She was strong. She was a seamstress. She sewed. Ultimately, she became one of these people. She worked for Sears or J.C. Penney's, one of the two, where she would get in the truck and come to your house and sort of measure your windows for the drapes, and she sold drapes. And she was a great salesperson and totally unintellectual, but very, very intelligent and very kind of practical and down to and cold. My dad was very emotional and warm and huggy, and my mother was rather kind of distant but I'm kind of one of these idiots who believes that we get the parents that we should get. Or at least in my case, I got exactly the parents who I needed to have.
Yeah, but David, I mean, look, I understand. I do that too. Because, honestly, that idea of, nothing happens in God's world that isn't whatever. But the truth is that you gain nothing from not seeing it that way.
Exactly.
Without it being,
I couldn't agree with you more.
A regret. You have to frame it like that way at some point, or else you're just gonna, you're gonna have a regret.
Well, but it's also helpful to frame it that way in that my goal is to live in gratitude because I think
I get it. Yeah, no, I know.
It's the only way we don't go crazy.
Doesn't mean they weren't shitty.
And in very important ways, they were shitty, and I can look at that. And in other ways, they were great. But in any event, because I'm happy with who I am now, I sort of needed them to go through whatever I went through.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and so if you can get to gratitude, however the hell you get to gratitude, whether it is sort of a ploy like you suggest that I need to frame it that way, which I don't disagree with, but in the end, as I sit here talking to you now, I am grateful to my mom. I am grateful to my dad for being who they are.
I feel that way. So your connection with jazz and African American music, black music at the time, is something that I identify with as well. And this was something that your father loved, and it was the jazz age. And did you get to see a lot of live stuff when you were very young?
Yeah, I did. I saw the Titans, or to me, the Titans,
How old were you? Like your father took you? How do you do that?
Yeah, he took me. He took me to Carnegie Hall. He took me to jazz clubs in Newark. I saw little Jimmy Scott, who later on became a guy whose biography I wrote. I saw Bird and Billie Holiday and Max Roach and Clifford Brown and And also sort of getting back to the religious part of it, as I look back, these were religious epiphanies. At the time, I couldn't call it that, but I was so moved and so amazed and so shook and so
by this early music.
By this early music, it made me fucking crazy.
I know that you frame this as your journey towards the Godhead, but when you're a kid, you're just excited, right?
Yeah, but you're also transformed. In other words, you are ecstatic. I guess that's the word I was looking for, like ecstasy.
Yeah.
So it is kind of like going, I remember I got a scene in the book where I go to an African-American church, and it looks great in there. There's kind of music, and you're right, and and I can't go in the church because I'm Jewish, and Jesus is kind of creepy, and I've been told it's creepy, and everything in my culture tells me that's not me, and yet everything is drawing me into that church. The people are happy, the music's jamming, and what it's taken me forever to understand is when I went to hear Charlie Parker at Birdland or Count Basie, wherever it was, I was entering into a church. And I was experiencing ecstasy that was transformative and that was lifting my heart and exciting me and taking me beyond what is the normal human condition. And I didn't know what to call that, except I had to go out and I had to buy every Billie Holiday album and every Lester Young. And then when I moved to Texas, the big deal that happened to me was moving to Texas when I was 12 and a half, because New York was all jazz and Texas was the blues, and I didn't really know anything about the blues.
Yeah, so you went to the source.
Exactly. And so when I heard Bobby Bland and B.B. King and Lightning Hopkins, I understood it all comes out of the blues. And it's a blues experience. And again, it's a transformative experience. And the cliche is you play the blues to lose the blues, but you also listen to the blues to lose the blues. And then even sort of deeper than all that, we are in the human condition, at least for me, is the blues condition. We are born to die. So we've all got the blues, you know what I'm saying?
What was it that B.B. King told you about his conception of Jesus?
He didn't say that much. His wasn't. Wasn't
he the one that told you that God had the blues?
Yes. Yeah. No, he did definitely tell me God had the blues.
He sent his son, his human son, down. Mm-hmm. And that in some ways Jesus was a personification of the blues man. And then I guess you asked, when Jesus was resurrected, were the blues gone? And BB said, no, of course not. The blues don't go away. Yeah. It's just communicated differently, right?
Yeah. And I believe that is true, that I think once we embrace the blues sensibility of life, I think we are seeing reality.
Well, that's also a great point. Another point in the book with the Jimmy Reed story, which I mean, I would encourage anybody to read these books for these. I mean, you're like Zelig. You just sort of lucked into these fucking moments because of your passion for something.
Yeah, but I don't think it was luck. Lots of people tell me that, but my feeling about it, I chased after Jimmy Reed. I chased after Marvin Gaye.
And Ray Charles.
Right, and I was rejected a lot by people who didn't want to hang out with me. So, I mean, I just made it a point like, hey, man, I want to know who you are.
Okay, well, I guess luck is not the... I mean, I think what was lucky is not that you got in that car with Jimmy Reed, but that, he happened to pull out a razor and you guys, and cut his girlfriend, and you guys end up at the fucking emergency room, and he tells you that in order to understand the blues, you got to live the blues. Right, I mean, that was a gift, dude. I mean,
I agree.
No amount of persistence was going to deliver that to you.
No. I agree. And that's always been, it's like chase after, Marvin Gaye, the way I chase after him and getting together with him.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about the arc of it.
Okay.
You know that, this music gets you going. Like, that you love this music. You love all of it. You love the entire spectrum. Like, the blues and the gospel are what sort of come together to make the R&B and make the jazz. And the jazz comes full circle and pulls the Jesus all the way out of it and creates a new spirituality. I get all that. Now, a couple of questions I have before I go into the